Good evening and welcome to the Burbank Police Department Community Engagement Meeting regarding the military equipment use policy AB 481. I would like to call this meeting to order. And next, we would like to call roll call.
Commissioner Chapman?
Here.
Commissioner Coombs?
Present.
Commissioner Ellman?
Here.
Commissioner Hartunian?
Here.
Chair Hakobian?
Here.
Commissioner McKenna is absent, and Commissioner Wenzel.
Present.
So we're going to be coming up with a public comment period. To speak during public comment, members of the public may speak for 3 minutes in person, or they may call 818-238-3335. Members of the public who attend the meeting in the City Council chambers will speak first, followed by those phoning in their comments. Chair, do we have any public comments? Not yet, okay. Do we have anyone on the phone?
We have 3 callers.
Okay. Go ahead, first caller.
First caller is Joseph Morales.
Hi, my name is Joseph, and I just wanted to register my opinion that, our city's in a deficit, and militarizing our police force does nothing to keep us safer, that these quote-unquote less lethal weapons are still lethal, and that we're seeing in other cities in our region, like the LAPD, the federal judge has barred them from using these deadly weapons, call them what they are, protesters. And I think it's a bit naive to entertain the idea that Burbank is immune from police brutality. I'm grateful that, there hasn't been an instance of police brutality that has escalated to the levels that we have seen in neighboring cities, but that doesn't mean that we need to toy or toy that line with these militarized equipment. It's unneeded, unnecessary, and a waste of our resources. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next caller.
Next caller is Nolan.
Hi. My name is Nolan, and I wanted to call in first and share a personal experience. I live on Chandler by the bike path, and I'm a father of 2 kids. And a few years ago, we saw that there was something happening there on the bike path, and we came out to check it out and interact with our community members. And it was one of the night out events sponsored by the police department. And as we were walking around, there was SWAT-looking armored vehicles and other sort of militarized-looking stuff. And it really made me uncomfortable with my children because these are made to be used here in our community with our neighbors. This isn't Afghanistan or some other place where America is fighting an insurgency. These are our neighbors. And so I agree with the previous caller that the resources spent on all this equipment could be better used on things like mental health services and other things that actually help our community stay safe. The budgets are so high right now, we should be using our resources elsewhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you, caller. And next caller, please.
Last caller is Allie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Allie. I've been a Burbank resident for over 7 years, and I'd also like to echo what previous callers have said as well in opposing funding for the militarization of the Burbank Police Department. Again, I do not feel comfortable with these military-grade weapons being used on our neighbors, on members of the community. As a previous caller stated, a federal judge actually banned the use of less than lethal weapons against protesters because just because they say it's less than lethal does not mean that it isn't lethal. We are in a lean budget right now, so I am asking that we do not move forward with purchasing these military-grade weapons, and we instead distribute those funds into investing into community resources. For example, we can fund more public programs, fund our schools, and not continue to militarize our local police department. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Thank you very much. With no additional callers or in-person comments, we did receive an email from an individual in regard to the military equipment. We'll be looking forward to addressing it and responding back. Okay. Thank you. And I will now close public comment period at this time. And next, we'll move on to agenda item D. Welcome, Lieutenant Former.
Well, thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate that. Chair Hakobian, Vice Chair Elman. I want to make sure I know that. And other commissioners, thank you very much for this opportunity. On behalf of the Burbank Police Department and Chief Quintero, what we're here to do is in the spirit of Assembly Bill 481, which was basically designed to increase transparency and accountability for the funding, acquisition, and use of military equipment by state and local law enforcement agencies. We are here to have a community engagement meeting where we can have an open and honest discussion about the equipment that we have, the purposes why we use them, and if there's any questions about our intended use for these tools, and if there's any questions or concerns about how these are used and the proposal for the use of these in our own community. I have a presentation that I'll start, but I want to thank everybody for being here. I know that we actually have some people in person, so I want to thank them for their engagement, and then hopefully we can all learn something by having this open discussion. How do I start the PowerPoint? Okay. Again, this is going to be a short presentation on the military equipment inventory report for 2025. In conjunction with that, we're also required to put our policy on our website. So at the end of this, I have a slide where I can direct everybody, I could direct the public and the community to our website and how they can find the report and our policy. Just a short background on this, I already discussed the spirit of Assembly Bill 481. The legislation included this, a very broad definition of what constitutes military equipment. I know the callers that we've had have already expressed they do not want to see the militarization of our police department. Some of what has been constituted in these definitions in this Assembly Bill have brought a lot of equipment and tools that we have used traditionally in law enforcement that are not used by military. The spirit of this is there was several agencies throughout California. There's a surplus after certain wars that were had by our military in the Gulf, in the Middle East, and other locations around the world. There's a surplus of equipment. They offer this to departments that can't fund this type of equipment on their own. So they offer this service to them, and there were several agencies throughout California that actually partook in this surplus program to acquire equipment that did come from the military. Some of this included high caliber rifles as well as armored vehicles. And we'll discuss in this presentation the armored vehicle that we have that is not a military type vehicle, armored rescue vehicle. On September 30th, 2021, Governor Newsom signed into law Assembly Bill 481, which went into effect January 1st, 2022. And the requirements of that were that the City Council approve a military equipment use policy, which we did in 2022. That City Council approve the equipment in our inventory, which was approved. And the military equipment use policy and the annual military equipment report shall be published on the law enforcement agency's website. We do this every year. Just as we're doing this presentation with the community engagement meeting with the Police Commission. Last month, we had our presentation with the Police Commission, and shortly thereafter, we published on our website the military equipment annual report along with our policy. And then a law enforcement agency shall hold at least one community meeting annually to allow the public to ask questions and discuss the report. In the meeting today, I know that copies of the report have been provided for those that were unable to view it on the website prior. The military equipment use policy. These are some things that are required to be in there, description of each type of equipment, the quantity, in our inventory, its capabilities, and the purchase cost, the purpose for which the department proposes to use the equipment, and the authorized use as deemed by the department for each type of the equipment, the expected lifespan of each item, the fiscal impact of each type of military equipment, and that's estimated on an annual cost to maintain it, and any utilization of the equipment in the past year. And if you see in our report, anytime we deployed any of these items that have been deemed to be military equipment, we have listed each one of those incidents out in the report. Now we'll get into the equipment, and just to preface what the equipment is used for, this is why we use this type of equipment. It enhances officer safety. It enables us to deal with dangerous situations without exposing ourselves unnecessarily, which nobody wants. This enables us to manage high-risk incidents, which we have several a year in the city of Burbank. And then it provides protective, less lethal options to officers. And we can discuss that. I know there was some concerns mentioned already about not having a need for that, but we can have a discussion about why we do need them. To start off in the equipment, these are our SWAT robots. The one on the left with the track system. This was made by a company by Robotex. We purchased this in 2012 when we were going to do a replacement. That company has since gone out of business. They are no longer manufacturing this device, and they also no longer offer a service agreement for us to maintain the device as it ages. So we are going to phase this out. We haven't used this in the last year. The robot on the right is what we're utilizing now, and that's called basically a scout or a recon robot. They're very small. But what it does is gives us the ability. We have a remote controller behind safety who can send this into a dangerous zone, primarily used to locate a dangerous subject. One of the limitations on the new robot is it doesn't have two-way communication, but it has infrared, it has a lighting system, and it has the camera. Everything we need to do to locate a dangerous subject without exposing our officers. In 2025, we deployed that robot 6 times. Talk about the drones. The drone on the left you see here, the larger drone, that's made by a company called DJI. It's called a Matrice drone. We use this primarily externally. We don't use this inside of building structures or residences. The one on the right, this is by a company called Sky Hero that has since been bought by Axon, but this device we use internally. We use this, it's a much smaller drone, and it's able to fit in crawl space, attics, and enclosed areas. The SWAT team uses this and the larger drone. Primarily for the external drone will be an overview of what we call the hot zone, the situation that's dangerous, and the internal drone we use to locate, just like we would with the SWAT robot. In 2025, we deployed this 47 times. Now to talk about our armored personal carrier, the Bearcat. What that stands for is Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counterattack Truck. We purchased this truck in 2008 with grant funding, which is approved by our city council. This vehicle is ending its end of life. So everyone is aware we secured additional grant funding, federal grant funding to purchase a new one this year. And we shall find out hopefully within the next couple of months if that money is going to land from the federal government with the Burbank Police Department, so we can try to do the acquisition of a new vehicle. The new vehicle has several improvements. It's a little bit larger. It has extra doors on the side, extra seating, and other safety features that have been added for officers, such as in the turret. It has more ballistic coverage for the officer that is exposed while standing in the turret area. We use this primarily for cover. This is a ballistic vehicle, so typically when we respond to a call with an armed suspect, instead of unnecessarily exposing our officers, we put them behind cover when we're trying to do crisis negotiations. If we're trying to negotiate their surrender, we do that behind cover, and that's what this vehicle is used for within the last year, but this is also our rescue vehicle. If we have an active shooter incident, an active threat incident, and we have downed civilians, injured civilians or injured officers, we would use this vehicle to drive in and try to rescue them and get them medical assistance. Again, not exposing our officers to unnecessarily to gunfire and being injured themselves. This vehicle was deployed 5 times in 2025. If you look at our command and control vehicle, this vehicle provides the department with a mobile base of operation and equipment to assist with a number of incidents. The vehicle can serve as a secondary communication center in the event of a natural disaster or if our 911 center were to fail. We all love technology, but we know sometimes technology will fail, and there's various reasons for that. So this is our secondary operations center so that there's no interruption to the service that the Burbank Police Department provides for our citizens. And also, we have to consider natural disasters such as a large earthquake or a large fire throughout the city. We have seen that in the LA County area. So keeping that in mind, this is our secondary base of operation. This was only deployed 3 times in 2025, and that was deployed specifically for an organized retail crime suppression detail in the Empire Center. That was in the month of December. Talk about specific munitions and other items that we have. This is called a noise flash diversionary device. Otherwise, several people will call it a flashbang, if that's a more common term that people understand. And the reason they call it that, when we deploy it, it makes a very bright flash of light, and it makes a very loud bang sound, a very loud booming sound. This device is used to temporarily divert the attention of suspects, dangerous suspects, that if we know we're going to get into a potentially lethal engagement with them, this is used to strictly as a diversionary tactic. Temporarily divert them from being able to acquire our officers as a target and gives us a little bit of leverage in that type of engagement. This overwhelms the senses of vision and hearing, allowing us to seize the moment of opportunity and take control of high-risk situations with dangerous suspects. This was deployed 5 times in 2025. Some specific chemical agent delivery devices. They can come in what looks, what you would call a typical type of grenade fashion. It's just a round thing with a pull pin. And then we have canisters. If you look at the canisters here, this is what the Burbank Police Department utilizes. We have CS gas, which is, I'm gonna murder the word. It's very scientific. Chlorobenzalidine malononitrile. And then you have, that's the CS gas. And then you have oleoresin capsicum, which is OC gas. These are designed strictly to cause discomfort and are deployed to control an individual or groups of individuals engaging or about to engage in violent behavior. You can use these by themselves, strictly CS, strictly OC, or you can use them in combination. It's not uncommon for us to put both because every human being reacts differently to these things. So sometimes if we will introduce both, we'll get the reaction that we're looking for. Primarily, just think of a barricaded suspect in a structure. Instead of us going into harm's way into the structure, we try to get them out. So we call it like an area denial. So we'll saturate a structure to get them to come out to us instead of us going into harm's way. Deployment of CS and OC are considered equivalent levels of force. The decision to deploy these, either alone or in combination, is situation driven, and it's made by the incident commander. The officer level, they're not going to make a decision to use these chemical agents. This is going to be made at the lieutenant and above. Usually the incident commander can start as a sergeant, but eventually transition to a lieutenant. And even times we'll have a captain at the scene. If we were to have a large public disturbance, the decision to use any type of these chemical agent munitions would be made by a captain at a captain level. Just to show you that we don't take this lightly and we don't use this frivolously. If these are deployed, things are pretty bad. Okay. I'm going to show you the next slide because this is a little bit different delivery device. However, this is what we primarily deployed in 2025. Chemical agents were deployed 11 times in 2025, and 9 of those times was used with this device here. This is called an MK9 Stream aerosol. It's OC vapor, they call it OC vapor or OC aerosol. Why we use this is if we have somebody hidden in a enclosed place like in a bedroom or in a bathroom or in a closet with a closed door, we can use the wand system underneath the door to insert this gas. It makes it very uncomfortable for them to get them to exit. Again, chemical agents were deployed 11 times in 2025. The kinetic energy weapon. This is a pepper ball launcher. The reason why we have this versus the other ones, if you look at the other devices, those are hand delivery. And sometimes you have to get up close and personal. The benefit of having a pepper ball launcher is this also launches a chemical agent called pava powder, which is a synthetic version of OC. Very similar, but people react differently to both substances. This gives us the benefit of staying behind cover to deliver at a distance. So if I'm on this type of incident, I wouldn't have to expose myself to danger. I could stay behind hard cover, use this, and deliver the chemical agent to get the people to do what we want them to do. This, again, deploys these pava powder projectiles. Just think of a paintball gun. If you've ever been hit with a paintball gun, it's very uncomfortable and it leaves a welt. This is very similar with this device here. The added benefit of this is that when the projectile breaks upon impact, it gives them the pava powder chemical agent, and we get the reaction we're looking for. These were deployed 6 times in 2025. The kinetic energy weapon. This is a 40 millimeter launcher. You may have heard other agencies use a 37 millimeter launcher. We use a 40 millimeter. All that is the size of the projectile that comes out of it. We primarily use, if you see on the left, the blue tip sponge round. This is a pain compliance device. In the past, we've used these on subjects that have threatened our officers or the community with a knife or a sword. We will use this, hopefully without having, what we try to do is de-escalate this when this could be a lethal confrontation. We will use a device like this to get a little pain compliance, and it has been very effective for us to use. So we primarily use that projectile, the blue sponge round. But then if you look at the others, we have the ability to deliver chemical agents as well from a distance with this launcher system. We deployed this 6 times in 2025. That's an overview of the equipment that we have. The website information where you go to get more detailed information to actually see the report, you could see how we used this, how we deployed it, and see how effective they were for the entire year of 2025 by going to our website. It's burbankpd.org. If you go to the top banner and select the tab Transparency, that will take you to another screen where you simply scroll down and you can find the actual tab for the annual military equipment report. And then we have a separate banner for our policies. All of the Burbank Police Department policies are published online all the time. And then if you click on that, search for policy 709 for military equipment, and then you can get a detailed description of what our policy is and authorized uses of this type of equipment in the city of Burbank. But with that concludes the presentation. But then if there's any questions, again, this was meant for community engagement, for them to ask questions and to get answers from us, specifically about any deployments we had, where there was any questions or concerns about how we use these devices and the outcome of the incidents. But with that, I'll open that up to questions.
Any questions in the audience?
Hi, my name is McLean Rogers.
You can come up to the mic.
Thanks. It's been a long time. I haven't spoken at a city hall since
Okay.
I was like 12. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is McLean Rogers. I've been a community member here in Burbank for the past few years. My question is regarding drones or remotely operated vehicles, those SWAT robots as they're called. Given in this presentation, do you think that there's any lack of human touch or connection that could have lasting impacts on how the Burbank PD relates to and humanizes its community members? I also wanted to know that if you are uncomfortable with the words like militarized, but you also concede that these are equipments, tools, and weapons that are surplus from wartime, what are we supposed to call them? I am deeply uncomfortable with these kinds of tools, equipment, and weapons being used in my community against possibly my community members. I too have gone to like those nights out in Burbank. They're wonderful community events that are really soured by being able to see these people in giant vests in what is supposed to be a nice community. Deeply uncomfortable with the use of it. Not a huge fan. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Lieutenant Farmer?
And thank you for your question. Just to give you some brief information on that. So the drones are basically for an overview. We have a helicopter, what we call an airship in the city of Burbank, which we use pursuits, critical incidents, high-risk incidents. The drones are basically going to be the future for possibly eliminating that, which is a very increased funding cost for an actual helicopter and the price of fuel to operate compared to a drone, which is very inexpensive. But it gives us the same ability to get an overview. Thank you, sir. What it does is it gives us an overview of the scene, of the topography, the area, the buildings, the structures, and how we direct our resources to the problem. So this tries to eliminate the impact on the community by finding the exact location of the problem, isolating it, containing it, and then we have to deal with that with some of the tools and resources we talked about today.
That doesn't answer my question.
I understand, but that's the drone is used for, but the personal touch, you got to understand that we don't use a drone alone, and the only contact somebody may have on an incident where we use the drone is with the drone. This is followed up with a police officer. So in the end, if we had a situation where we're using the drone, in the end, we're going to talk to every individual involved with the incident, where there's that human connection with the Burbank police officer, and why we're there, with the full explanation about why we're there, why we did what we did, and the outcome is either going to be a result of is somebody on the peripheral of a critical incident and not worried about an arrest or anything of that nature, but just a witness or hearing or being in the vicinity, they'll have a human connection with the Burbank police officer.
But in the moment, there is no two-way communication with the device.
These devices have two-way communication, but I can tell you from experience, they're so loud you can't hear it. It's not effective. So even though I may be able to speak to you because of the sound from it, you can't really hear. And then when you're talking to us, I can't really hear. So the two-way communication is not great on these yet. Basically, in the future, when they can make them a little more quieter, then it'll be a valuable something to invest in for us. But at the time, it doesn't work very well.
Thank you. And my other question, if you're uncomfortable with the use of the term.
Sure.
The meeting's being recorded, and so her comments are not going to be recorded because she's speaking
She'll
from
have
the
to come up to
audience.
the podium.
Either that or another microphone we can
Here,
pass
Okay.
around.
No, I'll stand here and you go there. And then my other question, if you're uncomfortable with the term militarized being used for these tools, devices, equipments, weapons, but they are surplus being bought from times of war, what are we supposed to refer to them as? Does it matter?
So the Burbank Police Department did not partake in the military surplus program. We have not purchased anything that has been military surplus. All of the tools and equipment we have are for a specific legitimate law enforcement purpose, purchased through vendors that make this equipment for law enforcement. We did not. There are agencies they're called MRAPs, large armored vehicles. There are agencies that couldn't purchase a Bearcat like we did, which is specifically made for law enforcement, that purchased those surplus vehicles. We did not do that. So the equipment we have, there's a bit of a misnomer of calling some of this equipment military equipment. Because in times of war, they're not really going to use the less lethal weapon systems. That's what we use so that we try to avoid a lethal confrontation, because nobody wins when we have lethal confrontation with our community members. No matter what the crime or the seriousness of the crime, our job is to save lives, protect life and property. So the outcome we want, which is a success for you, me, and our entire community, is that we don't harm people. We try to avoid that, and that's what these weapon systems are for.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions in the audience?
Hi, how's it going? I'm Michael Schneider. I've been a Burbank resident for about 5 years now. The number one thing I wanted to focus on is all the chemical agents being used. We've got OC, it's pepper spray, that's pretty standard. We're talking about CS gas here. That's tear gas. And actually, militarization is not really the right term because that's banned in war. And I don't understand why a civilian population would vote to have people use war crimes on us. I wasn't able to be super prepared because I just got that packet recently as I walked in. But I was leafing through the uses of this stuff, and the vast majority of these things were like a guy in a dumpster. You could wait. He'll come out. Eventually, he stole something. I don't know why we need to be using not weapons of war crimes on our own civilian population. That's the number one thing. Also, those 40 millimeter things, they really, really hurt. I've been hit with them at peaceful protests, and they are not cool. I've also seen them embedded in the legs of people. I've seen them take people's eyes out. It's not. Less lethal is not cool. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay. And Michael, John Fromer, Lieutenant. I'm currently in our Professional Standards Bureau, but I'm also the tactical commander for our SWAT team. I'm one of the people in this agency that has a lot of experience using these. And as you mentioned, they're called less than lethal, but anything, there are times when things can become lethal when not intended. That is true. With the gas, the CS gas is not the same as the tear gas used in wartime. There is CN gas, which we do not use. We use CS gas, and we use OC. Every officer, I even have some on me now, has a can of OC spray. The reason that we use CS gas and OC is that we don't want people to have a known allergic reaction that has a serious side effect, such as causing death. So that's why we use these, because they have been proven on a majority of the population to not have that allergic reaction effect. What it does is it causes brief irritation. It causes your eyes to water. It causes you to cough. You may feel like you can't really breathe well. It causes a skin irritation. And what we use it for is for our safety. As you mentioned in the dumpster, I've been on calls where the subject in the dumpster has a high-powered rifle, and I got to tell you, I'm not putting my head in there. And I wouldn't expect my officer or anybody else to do that, to expose themselves. So how do we go about getting them to want to remove themselves from the dumpster? That's what we use these devices for. Again, I understand your point about in times of war with tear gas. That's a different chemical makeup that we do not use. We use CS and OC specifically because of the fact if we were to deploy these in a residence, what we've shown is typically when we deploy these, we have to break a window or open a window or open a door. That ventilates the property. So these things are not done in a vacuum. It's not done in a closed system. We actually ventilate the building while we're deploying them. So there hasn't been a fatal consequence of using these. There has been when there was somebody in an enclosed area with a medical condition that obviously we're not going to know the people we come into contact with their medical history is, but there was a fact where that person died. But we take all of this into account, and as I mentioned before, we don't use these lightly. The OC spray that we use, that's primarily what we've been using, and that has not killed somebody, at least that we're aware of, or that's been documented to where we've been notified of that. The CS gas, the CN gas on the enclosed space, we are aware of that. And it was an elderly subject that had pre-existing medical conditions that contributed to that. So you know, we don't take it lightly when we use it. We use it for safety only.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Any other questions in the audience?
Hello, my name is Cameron Dennison. I've been living in Burbank since 2019. My biggest concern with this equipment is that it may be used against Burbank citizens. This is something that we saw in Los Angeles with the peaceful protests that were happening due to ICE, the No Kings protest. Where is that line where this equipment might be used on our fellow neighbors? And will there be any sort of accountability for the officers who use this equipment?
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, Cameron, thank you. Again, John. To answer your question, you're talking about more of a large-scale protest. So you know, in a peaceful protest, there's time, place, and manner restrictions, and then also people have to abide by the law. When it turns into a not peaceful protest, when it turns into a riotous situation where people are hurting one another, burning down buildings, or causing something that can be fatal to others, or they give us the intent that they want to cause us fatal harm to the police, that's when these things would be utilized in a public protest situation, okay? It has to be declared a riot first. It has to be declared an unlawful assembly. We have to give people the opportunity to leave. Subjects that are engaging in this criminal behavior is who we're going to use these devices against. So I don't want the public or the community to think that we're going to come out and use this against them. There's going to be a crime attributed to the use of this. I don't want to talk about Los Angeles. We're not Los Angeles, but we're all aware of that. We all saw the reporters that were hit with a 40 millimeter or other devices. We are trained on how to use the devices, and so you understand, we even try to limit exposure to potential injuries because there's certain areas of the body that we're not allowed to target or hit. I'm not saying that somebody could move and we inadvertently hit them there. That's a potential. But what we do is we're trained specifically on how to use these devices, where to target, and anytime we use force against somebody, the chief can attest to this, one of our primary things is to get medical attention to that subject. So even though an incident may rise to the level where we have to use this type of force, our primary concern is how do we get them medical help afterwards, or are they even injured? And if they are injured, we're going to get them medical attention. But the purpose of this is to bring a situation that's unlawful under control or to arrest somebody. If that makes sense. So we're not going to use this again. We're not going to go out and use this on a wide scale, and we're definitely not going to use this within our communities. These devices are used to apprehend violent criminal offenders that have shown us the intent to harm us or other community members, and then a violent protest where there's threat of serious property damage or loss of life.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Are there any other questions in the audience? Okay. With no questions? I'm sorry? Oh, do we have any phone or anyone calling in?
We have 2 callers.
Okay.
First caller is Laura.
First caller?
Hello, good evening. I'm just really concerned that this is going to be used in our neighbors and our other citizens and friends here in Burbank. And I'm sorry, why does the Burbank Police Force need even more weapons and even more money? When I hear phrases like chemical agents and compliance tactics and strategies described as ways to get people to do what you want them to do, and saying things like they can be lethal even when they're not intended to be, this language is really chilling. It's not a language of community safety. It's a language of control. Like, don't you already have enough weapons? I'm wondering if instead we can spend this money on mental health responders and youth programs, violence prevention, community partnerships that reduce harm and strengthen trust. And I was just wondering if you could speak to that.
Okay.
Thank you, caller. Next caller, please.
Next caller is Nolan.
Or should they answer the question first? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just go and respond first.
Yeah, if they don't mind holding, I'll respond first to make this a little easier for everyone to hear. Again, these devices are used. Typically, when you talk about de-escalation, the emphasis is going to be to de-escalate a volatile situation to the point where you don't have to use force. But people have to keep in mind that if we have a situation where it could be potentially lethal, utilization of these tools de-escalates from a lethal confrontation to possibly bringing this subject or situation under control without the need for lethal force, where there might just be minor injuries as a result of the less than lethal tool. If you were to take away the less than lethal tools, I know the comment was you already have weapons. Well, that's firearms. So that makes, I would hate to say that in our community that my only option is to shoot a violent subject that has the intent to harm an officer or another community member, that I'm going to relinquish or give up the ability to use these other tools that could save the life of even the criminal offender. That's what these tools are for, again, because our primary mission is to protect life and property. To answer that question, the goal of these devices are to de-escalate and to save lives, not to add to something. Obviously, we don't want to be redundant and buy a bunch of weapon systems that don't have a specific purpose. All of these have a very specific purpose, and the less than lethal devices are to help save lives and de-escalate potentially lethal confrontations to bring somebody under control peacefully and have them surrender.
Thank you, Lieutenant. And next caller?
Last caller is Nolan.
Hi. So I just want to point out before I ask my question that you do seem to be playing some semantic games, like over the word military. You argued over the gas, whether it was the same gas that was used in warfare versus the gas you use, when the reality is the Geneva Convention says no gas, except for domestic, which is what you're doing. I also want to point out the BEARCAT acronym, which you said is not a military equipment. The acronym, which you said earlier, is Ballistic Engineered Armored Response Counter-Attack Truck. So attack is in the name of the thing, and on their website they refer to it as having military-grade armor, military-grade this and that. So my question is, when you talk about, you said the man that died from the one use of chemical weapons he had pre-existing conditions. You couldn't know that in advance. And you said that sometimes you use the force because these are criminal, because they are unlawful, because it's dangerous. But you also talked about a man in a dumpster, and you said maybe he has a weapon. So my question is, how do you know when you use all of these? How do you know that it really is a lethal scenario? Because you've described scenarios that do not rise to that level.
Okay, there's several parts to that. To touch on the gas again, this is not tear gas. Not trying to play word games or semantics with this. These devices were made for law enforcement, to be utilized in a law enforcement setting as less than lethal devices. Again, when you mention how do we know, unfortunately for us, we will never know if someone is armed, and we will never know if they have an intent to harm us when we have that contact. Large percentage of our contacts in our community are peaceful and go the way they're supposed to go. However, there's that small percentage that is very unpredictable, and we have had officers injured as a result, and we've even had officers killed. We recently had one of our canine officers killed, which would have been a routine traffic stop. Nobody thinks that when we make a traffic stop for a traffic violation that someone's going to produce a gun and shoot at us or try to kill us or harm us. So that's what these are for. These tools and systems are built in for less than lethal, so it doesn't have to become lethal, which cannot always be prevented. It is dictated and driven by the suspect's actions or the criminal offender's actions. We do not go in with a mindset that we're going to harm somebody. The use of these tools is not to cause harm. The use of these tools is to reduce the amount of harm that is potentially done to somebody, to arrest or bring an incident under control. And again, we did not participate in the military surplus program. These tools are made for law enforcement. If you try to take these tools and put it towards a military operation, it's not effective. That's what these devices and tools are for. When you talk about our ballistic vehicle, the primary word in there is counterattack, means that we've been attacked. So this is not an offensive device or vehicle. This is purely defensive. This is to protect us in a very dangerous situation.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Any more comments or questions? Okay. I would like to thank everyone for coming tonight. And with no further questions in the audience, I would, any other further last statements or anything, or no?
Again, I want to thank everybody for the engagement, because I think what we do is get understanding and clarity when we have these discussions. If you're not familiar with these devices, obviously, before I became an officer, I was not familiar with any of these weapon systems, chemical munitions, or anything of that nature. However, I've become an expert in the field primarily because of what I've pursued throughout my career in the tactical field with the SWAT team and through the use of these devices. I could tell you from firsthand personal experience that we have saved lives, which would, if my team did not have these devices, they would have ended with the death of somebody. We successfully prevented that from happening. And those individuals that may have been suffering a crisis, like some people, like many of us do throughout our lives, in our worst moment, I would like to think that we can bring to the table tools and weapons to help solve this problem without causing fatal injuries or killing somebody. And that's what their purpose is for. So I don't expect everybody to be familiar or comfortable with these things. But the engagement and conversation to try to get understanding is fantastic. I think that's the goal. And I would even like to talk to our chief. I'd like to talk to Chief Quintero about potentially we do a community academy if we even do small demonstrations of what these things are. All of our officers are exposed to these devices. When I came on the job, I had to get tased. I had to be in an enclosed room with CS gas. I had to get pepper sprayed directly in the face. The reason why we did that is to show that it's not lethal, but it is very uncomfortable, and you pretty much want to make it stop, and you'll do what anybody tells you to do to make it stop. The same with the taser device. The good thing is that once we've decontaminated somebody or removed them from the contaminated area, there's no more symptomology or adverse effects to this. And that's the purpose of it. But again, we'd like to continue this. Please, on our website, I encourage everyone to go to our website, click on the military report, see how we've deployed this in our own community. And if there's any questions, you can always contact us. And I know the chief and I and all of our officers would have an open and honest discussion with you.
Thank you, Lieutenant, for your presentation, answering the audience questions. Thank you, audience, for coming in tonight. And also thank you, callers, for calling in. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.